Welcome to Cheaters Theater. Over 95% of you watch without subscribing. Please like the video, subscribe, and turn on the bell. And tell us, where are you watching from? We'd love to know. Let's begin. Decision-making can be described as the process of choosing one option or course of action over another. Many decisions are straightforward, like deciding what to eat for dinner or which shirt to wear in the morning. However, some choices are life-altering and have the potential to shape our future in profound ways. It is precisely this kind of decision that I now face, and I must admit I am deeply afraid of making the wrong choice. My dilemma stems from the fact that my ex-girlfriend Jenna Hart wants us to get back together. We broke up in high school, and since then I cannot recall a single day where I have truly felt happy. The breakup was her doing. She broke my heart. While I genuinely believe she would not hurt me again, the fear of being wrong is overwhelming. Let me introduce myself. My name is Caleb Morgan Price, though most people call me Caleb. My parents do too, unless they are upset with me. To explain how I ended up in this situation, I need to take you back a few decades to my childhood. I was labeled a child prodigy early on, gifted with an innate mechanical aptitude. I could understand the inner workings of almost anything. Hand me a broken object, and I would have it repaired and functioning before most people could even identify the problem. My father was a high-ranking corporate administrator who climbed the ladder to secure a corner office, his own parking spot, and access to the executive washroom. While my dad made more than enough to support the three of us, my mom decided to return to work when my uncle, her brother, ran into trouble at his auto shop. He had to let go of an employee, leaving him short-staffed and in desperate need of a reliable front desk receptionist. My mom agreed to step in, but only on the condition that she could bring me along, as I was just 5 years old at the time. Initially, everyone worried I would become bored or disruptive at the shop, but they agreed to give it a try. My parents even brought along some quiet toys to keep me occupied. Predictably, the toys did not hold my attention for long, and I began exploring the shop, searching for something more engaging. That is when I discovered my uncle's collection of automotive repair manuals. Thanks to my mom, I had learned to read at an early age, and as I flipped through the colorful illustrations in those manuals, I found they actually made sense to me. At first, my mom probably assumed I was just looking at the pictures, but as long as I stayed quiet and did not damage the books, no one minded, so I kept reading. I spent hours each day poring over those manuals, learning everything I could about auto repair. Many of the books were incredibly detailed, teaching me not only about car components and their functions, but also about the tools required to work on different types of vehicles. My secret came to light one day when Daryl Short, one of my uncle's mechanics, came into the office to check the ignition timing for a car he was working on. Without thinking, I blurted out the answer: 1 degree over top dead center. Daryl was stunned not just by the fact that I understood the question, but by the fact that I was right when he looked it up in the book to confirm. His shock turned to excitement. He spent the next 10 minutes testing me with questions about car repair, growing more impressed as I rattled off correct answers. My uncle, curious about what was taking so long, came to investigate. By the time my mom returned from the restroom, she found both men taking turns quizzing me, trying to stump me with increasingly difficult questions and failing every time. At the time, I did not fully understand why they were so amazed. To me, it was just a fun game. But seeing how excited these grown men were made me feel proud. It was the beginning of a journey that would shape not only my skills, but my entire life. From that moment on, my uncle took a more active role in my development, even going as far as to take me out to the shop when it was not busy to teach me firsthand about the things I had been studying in his books. It became clear early on that I not only had some type of gift when it came to anything mechanical, but I was actually learning from what I was reading and not just memorizing script out of a magazine. My uncle Mark Bennett started out having me describe how to do different repair jobs and then gradually moved up to having me attempt them on my own. He, of course, was always right by my side to supervise, and although not being anywhere near as strong as my uncle was a hindrance, I seemed to perform remarkably well given my small size and, of course, my age. As time went on, my uncle would allow me to do some things that did not require certification on my own. If I needed any help, all I would have to do was ask one of his employees for assistance. Usually this was only done when I was not strong enough to twist something loose or tighten it back up again properly. At first, my uncle's workers seemed annoyed by my presence, but it was not too long before they became amazed by my abilities and welcomed me into their fold. Although they did have to tone down their profanity quite a bit, I was occasionally privy to my share of adult content. Uncle Mark started me on my first set of tools that Christmas, and from then on they became my toys of preference. I would go with Mom and help Uncle Mark out in the shop until it was finally time for me to start school. I hated not being able to work in the shop all day, but some of my classes were fun, and it seemed nice to be able to interact with my peers. At least it did at first, anyway. It quickly became apparent that although I excelled in reading comprehension and anything mechanical, being surrounded by grown-ups all day long had affected my ability to socialize with kids my own age. I did great in some classes and well enough in others, but I quickly earned the reputation of being a loner, having next to nothing in common with any of my classmates. Beside the book work, during the next few years my interest expanded beyond mere automotive repair to anything mechanical. I could now fix just about anything electrical, from VCRs and DVD players to toasters and garage door openers. I was even good at building computers, though I did not know how to run them very well after they were put together. When I turned 9, I was once again looking forward to working in the shop over the summer, but my uncle had other ideas and convinced my parents to let him enter me in an automotive certification class hosted by a local junior college. Of course, he had to get special permission from the instructor due to my young age. At first, the guy assumed that my uncle was joking, but upon discovering that he was serious about getting me enrolled in the program, Professor Dalton told him that he was not going to waste a class seat on a kid who was probably barely able to change motor oil. Uncle Mark challenged the professor to test me on my knowledge of automotive repair, and when he refused, saying it was a waste of his time, my uncle decided to get a bit creative. "I'll tell you what, document. I have $100 here that says Caleb can pass any entrance examination you come up with," my uncle challenged. "I am not going to bet on this child's inability to pass my prerequisite test," Professor Dalton responded. "What's wrong, Doc? Afraid you'll lose? I'll even make it easy on you. If Caleb fails your test, you can keep the money and never have to hear from us again. But if he passes, I get my $100 back and you sign the waiver to accept him into this program. Either way, you stand to lose nothing," my uncle said. "All right, Mr. Bennett, it's your money," the professor said with an arrogant chuckle. "And I intend to keep it that way," my uncle replied, with a grin on his face. As you can probably imagine, I was not overly thrilled by this turn of events, as the instructor for this course clearly did not want me in his class. My uncle calmed me down by telling me to just do my best and not to be concerned about the outcome. The entrance exam actually went really well. The professor started off easy, thinking he could stump me early on. When that did not work, he moved to the more advanced subject matters, and by the time we had finished with the test, he was throwing things at me that were beyond what his class was meant to teach. I knew this because I had already read the course book. When it was all said and done, I had to attend a class on both Tuesdays and Thursdays, while my uncle got his $100 back, something that did not seem quite fair if you asked me. For the next couple of years, summer seemed to take on the same pattern, with my uncle using his little $100 bill trick until people started recognizing my name when I would enroll for a class. After that, the professors would usually just sign the waiver without provocation. It was 10 days before Christmas, and my mom and I were coming back from the mall when we noticed a car stalled on the side of the road with what appeared to be a woman and a little girl who looked to be about my age still sitting inside it. Mom pulled over, and before she could stop me, I jumped out of the car and went over to ask the lady if she needed any help. That is when I recognized the girl sitting beside her to be my classmate Jenna Hart. Jenna was in a few of my classes at school, and although we were not exactly friends, seeing that I really did not have any my own age, she was always nice to me. Jenna did not have any real friends either, but it was for a totally different reason. Her dad skipped out on her mother when she got pregnant, leaving Jenna's mom to be the sole provider for the family. She worked hard in her secretarial job, but it did not pay all that much. I knew all of this because I accidentally overheard Jenna explaining it to one of the teachers one day when she did not have enough money to buy school pictures like the rest of us did. I always felt bad for Jenna after that, but I did not want to tell her what I had heard and possibly make her feel worse. "Excuse me, ma'am, but what seems to be the problem?" I asked, while knocking on the window. "Oh, the car just started sputtering, and then it died. I am hoping that if I just give it a few minutes, it will start back up again," Jenna's mom, who I later learned was Kara Hart, replied. "Why don't you pop the hood and let me take a look at the engine. I asked. I am sorry, son, but I do not really think there is much you can do, she said, slightly amused at my request. I am a certified general mechanic, I told her proudly. You really should not tell fibs, little boy, she said to me in a slightly annoyed tone of voice. He is telling you the truth, ma'am, my mother said as she walked toward their car. Caleb is a genius when it comes to anything mechanical, she added. I believe the term they used at the university was child prodigy. Mom, I said, hating to be referred to as a genius. That is unbelievable, Kara stated. He is not lying, Mom. Caleb is in some of my classes at school, and I overheard a few of the teachers saying the same thing, Jenna told her, having finally recognized who I was. With my identity now verified, at least by her own daughter, Jenna's mom reluctantly popped the hood as I began to diagnose her problem. After once again failing to get it started, I recognized that the old model of Chevy she was driving had a corroded vacuum hose. After sealing it with electrical tape, I took a rag and held it tightly over the tailpipe. This created enough suction that it freed the hose of excess air, allowing the engine to start even though it was clearly not in the best of shape. I cannot believe you got it started. How much do I owe you? She asked nervously. Oh, there is no charge for this, but it is only a temporary fix at best. You really should drop by the shop tomorrow and let me work on it some more, I suggested, handing her one of my business cards that my uncle made up for me. I would like to, but with the holidays coming up, I really just do not have the money right now, she confessed. Look, because of the child labor laws, I am not really supposed to work tomorrow anyway. Stop by the shop in the morning around 10:30 a.m. and I will only charge you for whatever parts you need, I told her. I could not let you do that, she started to protest. Sure you could, I replied. Just think of it as an early Christmas gift to Jenna. I would not want her or her mother to get stranded someplace because of something I could easily fix, I said. Would your uncle get upset that you were working on cars for free? Kara asked. No. As long as we are not busy and the mechanic is working off the clock, my uncle lets his employees bring in cars to work on all the time for various reasons. I know he would not have a problem with me doing this, I told her. I still do not think I should let you do this for us for free, Kara said. Okay, how about you bake me some of your oatmeal chocolate chip cookies? I suggested. Jenna had brought some into class for Halloween one year, and they were some of the best I had ever tasted. I suppose I could do that, she agreed reluctantly. Great. Then I will see the two of you tomorrow. Bye, Jenna, I said, waving my hand at her. Goodbye, Caleb, and thank you, she said meekly. You are welcome, I replied, as they started to drive away. Why did you do that? My mom asked me after we were back in our car. Mom, Jenna's mother does not have much money. I overheard her telling one of the teachers at school that she could not afford to have her picture taken because her father left them before Jenna was born, and her mother's job just did not pay very well. Uncle Mark has a big heart, and I know that he will not have a problem with me doing this for them, I replied. That is very nice of you. But if I did not know any better, I would say that you have a little crush on Jenna, Mom teased. Oh, come on, Mom. I feel bad for her, that is all. Some of the kids at school found out that Jenna's mother buys her clothing from the Salvation Army. Now a lot of them make fun of her for wearing used clothes, I told her. That is terrible, she remarked. Kids can be cruel, Mom, especially if you are different, I said, reflecting on some of my own personal experiences. Are we still talking about Jenna, or is that how they treat you as well? Mom asked insightfully. I do not want to talk about it, I replied honestly. Okay, but if you ever do feel like talking, I am always ready to listen, she said lovingly. Thanks, Mom, I said, ending our conversation. As I had predicted, after I explained some of the hardships they had been through, my uncle did not have a problem with me helping out Jenna and her mother. So around 10:30, an old rickety car pulled into the shop with Ms. Hart behind the wheel and Jenna riding shotgun. As she had promised, Jenna's mother had baked a fresh batch of her famous oatmeal chocolate chip cookies, which I made sure to share with Jenna, essentially earning me a bright smile for my troubles. Jenna sat out in the shop and talked with me while I worked on her mother's car. I had been a loner for so long that it was actually nice to carry on a conversation with someone my own age, even if it was not about anything mechanical. My uncle had a policy of only selling new or factory rebuilt parts, yet he had a collection of used materials in his warehouse for any of us to use in case someone could not afford to pay. Uncle Mark saw this act of charity as a way to give back to the community, which had afforded him a good living all these years. I ended up using several of those parts on Jenna's mother's vehicle, and when I was finished, the grand total for the new materials came to $11.35. Jenna's mother was ecstatic, which is something that I got the feeling Jenna did not see a lot of at her home. My diligent, hard labor earned me another of those fabulous smiles that I, for some reason, suddenly seemed to enjoy getting. After Jenna and her mother left in a car that was considerably more reliable than when they came in, my uncle started to tease me about having a girlfriend. Of course, I strictly denied the accusation, but in the back of my mind I started to wonder if, just maybe, he was right, and if so, would that really be such a bad thing? Because of my little Christmas present, Jenna and I started talking to each other more at school, and suddenly it did not seem quite as depressing as it had once been. Jenna's birthday, which coincidentally coincided with Valentine's Day, fell on a Saturday that year. For a present, she had received 3 tickets to Harbor Bay Park from her aunt, who sent them by mail because she and her husband had plans to celebrate that night and were not able to visit her in person. Since we lived in a relatively warm climate, the park was already open for business. I was shocked to get the invitation to accompany them to the park and initially asked if it was Jenna's mother's idea to take me as payment for the work I had done on her car. Jenna assured me that it was her idea to invite me, but her mother did feel it was a nice gesture after she made the suggestion. After receiving permission from my parents, I did something I rarely ever do and took a day off from work at my uncle's garage to go with Jenna and her mother to the park. All Jenna could talk about on the way there was a new coaster she had heard about called the Vortex. It was supposed to be one of the most thrilling rides ever designed, and I was looking forward to going on it myself. I loved roller coasters and, being mechanically minded, was fascinated by the design of them. I actually knew quite a bit about this particular ride, having researched it for a report I wrote on the mechanics of roller coasters in one of my summer college classes. I could not wait to see it in action. As we were anxiously waiting in line for our turn to challenge this mighty hunk of steel, suddenly there was a loud noise, and the train stopped moving. About 7 minutes later, I saw a man who I recognized as Walter Hale talking to a guy in a hard hat. Neither of the men seemed particularly happy at that moment. I asked Jenna to hold my place in line while I went up to greet them. I overheard the man in the hard hat, who I assumed was one of the engineers of the ride, say that the linear induction motor they had recently installed was defective and that they would not be able to get a replacement for it until at least Monday afternoon. Mr. Hale was livid. "Do you realize that a representative from Travel Magazine is coming here today to do a feature story on this ride? Is there anything you can do to get it up and running again?" Mr. Hale asked. "I am sorry, but not without a working linear induction motor, and we do not have one," the guy said. Poor Jenna had started to cry when she found out that the coaster she so badly wanted to ride was having technical difficulties, and now this news would crush her. Since I wished to prevent her from shedding any more tears, I did something I rarely ever do when I am not working. I confronted the men with my so-called genius abilities. "Excuse me, Mr. Hale," I started to say. "What is it, son? Are you lost or something?" The man asked. "No, sir, but I could not help overhearing your discussion, and eavesdropping is not a very nice thing to do, son. I am afraid what you heard was true. The Vortex is shut down until further notice," he said. "Actually, sir, I think I may have a solution to your problem," I told him. "And just what might that be?" he asked with a chuckle. "Why do you not switch out the linear induction motor with the one in the Sidewinder? It uses the same part number and is a much less popular ride," I suggested. "I am sorry, son, but our coasters do not use interchangeable parts," Mr. Hale explained. "Actually, Walt, in this case, the kid is right. I do not know why I did not think of it before. We could close down the Sidewinder and have the Vortex operational again in about the engineer was about to say. 45 minutes, I said, finishing his sentence. "Yes, how did you know that?" the guy asked. "I wrote a report about the mechanics of roller coasters for one of my summer college classes," I answered truthfully. "Sure, kid. What are you, like 12 years old?" the engineer asked. Actually," I replied. "Oh, there you are, Caleb. You really should not wander off like that." "I was worried sick," Kara said. "I am sorry, ma'am. It will not happen again," I said, apologizing. "Are you this boy's mother?" Mr. Hale asked. "No. Caleb and my daughter are friends, and she invited him to come with us today to help her celebrate. You see, today is my daughter's birthday, and she received some tickets to the park from her aunt as a gift, Kara explained. Caleb has been telling us that he attends college, Mr. Hale told her. Oh, he does during the summer. You see, Caleb is a child prodigy with anything mechanical. The rest of the time he attends normal classes with my daughter, she explained. That is amazing, Mr. Hale exclaimed. Excuse me, sir, but should not somebody get working on the rides? I reminded them. Oh, sorry. I mean shoot, the engineer said, holding his hand to his mouth, obviously embarrassed that he had almost cursed in front of us. Do not worry about it, man. I hear much rougher language working in my uncle's garage, I told him. You work in your uncle's garage too? Mr. Hale asked. Yes, I am a certified general mechanic, I told him. After getting the okay to switch out the linear induction motor from Mr. Hale, Victor Nguyen, the head engineer I was talking to, had his team begin to disassemble both rides so that they could swap out the parts. Would you and your friend please come with me, son? Mr. Hale asked. Well, sir, Jenna and I really wanted to ride the Vortex once it is running again, and we do not really want to lose our spot in line. It is rather a long wait, I explained. Do not worry about that, son. I will personally see to it that you and your friend get to ride anything you want as much as your heart's desire, Mr. Hale said. Jenna, her mother Kara, and I followed Mr. Hale into a private employee-only section of the park. There he had a member of his staff take down our names and information before presenting us with an electronic line eliminator device that let us move to the beginning of any line in the park. This was the deluxe model given only to VIPs, allowing us to ride any attraction as many times as we wanted for as long as we wished to do so. Mr. Hale told us that the only stipulation was that we could only take front row seats twice in a row in any half-hour period, as it would be unfair to the other patrons for someone to hog the front row seats indefinitely. Mr. Hale also indicated that he had a surprise for us when we were ready to turn in our pass that evening. Of course, Jenna was ecstatic to be getting the royal treatment on her birthday outing. They had the Vortex operational again within the hour. Personally, I think I could have done it faster, but I decided not to mention that fact to anyone, as I had bragged enough for one day. Jenna made a beeline to the Vortex, and as I expected, she wanted to ride in the front row. The young lady sitting next to me was contagiously happy, as the joy she was experiencing radiated off her and onto me, leaving us both with matching grins. I had pointed out to Jenna earlier where high-speed cameras would snap your picture during the ride's peak and then try to sell you the photos later. Of course, I used a different word than climax while giving my explanation. Jenna surprised me when we came to this point. Instead of waving into the camera, she leaned over and gave me a kiss on the cheek, forever sealing that moment in time where my heart and hers bonded into a perfect union. I fell in love with Jenna that day, and when the ride was over, I went over and purchased each of us a copy of that photograph. Since I did not get Jenna anything for her birthday because I was not aware of when it was, I made a point of buying her various mementos of our day together. I wanted my friend to have a day she would never forget, and I think I was achieving that very goal. Jenna's mom could never afford to waste money on things like giant stuffed animals and overpriced amusement park food. I made pretty good money working for my uncle, and I could not think of a better use for it than making Jenna happy. At one point, Jenna's mom pulled me aside and said I was going overboard with my spending. After explaining to her my reasoning for it, I received a second kiss on the cheek from a beautiful woman that day, this time from her mother. Mr. Hale was not lying when he said he had a surprise for us when we turned in the VIP device at the end of our visit. He had upgraded our one-day tickets into season passes, allowing us to come back anytime during the year for free. We were all tired from our antics at the park, but no one more so than Jenna. It had been an emotional day for her. She fell asleep, snuggling up against me on our way home. From that day on, my friendship with Jenna intensified. I took to calling her Jen, which was something she would not let anyone else get away with, but she seemed to prefer it from me. More of my free time was spent with either me over at her house or Jen here at mine. Although I would never say it out loud, Jen's mom was a much better cook than my own. I ate several meals at her place and thoroughly enjoyed each of them. Since I knew that Jen's mom did not make much money, I would do odd jobs while I was visiting her and fix anything mechanical they had broken. I figured I more than made up for what I ate, as I must have saved her thousands of dollars in repair costs throughout the years. When I was 16, I talked my parents into allowing me to buy a car. I would not be able to drive it for a whole other year in some states, but this way I could work on fixing it up in anticipation of that glorious moment. I had Jen help, or really, in all honesty, watch me rebuild the vehicle while I showered her with dreams of what the two of us could do together once we had our own set of wheels. As we made the transition into high school, Jen developed from a cute little girl into a stunningly beautiful young woman. It was then that she started attracting the attention of some of the a-holes that had previously shunned her. Although she did seem to enjoy this newfound attention, Jen never encouraged any of their behavior in my presence, and we spoke often about how she was still troubled by the way these guys used to treat her. There were a few heads that turned my way as well, though I suspect that had more to do with my shiny, newly rebuilt Chevy Camaro than it did with my physical attributes. If truth be known, I did develop some well-defined muscles while dealing with heavy equipment at the shop, but I never thought my body was anything special. I always felt that any special attention I received was due to the fact that I was one of the few freshmen to have their own car. As I grew older, life seemed to just get busier, as I was trying to balance my time between high school, working in my uncle's shop, my college classes in the summer, and of course Jen. We somehow managed to maintain our relationship, even though I never seemed to have the amount of free time that most of my peers enjoyed. Jen knew that I was working toward a future that I hoped someday to share with her. During my junior year, I ended up selling off my Camaro for a nice profit and replaced it with a used Porsche 911 that needed some work. Jen was not too thrilled about me having to devote so much time into rebuilding its engine, but the envious look she received when I drove her to school at the start of our senior year made the effort I put into restoring this beautiful hunk of automotive machinery all seem like a worthy undertaking. Aside from my lack of free time, the only real subject Jen and I constantly disagreed upon was intimacy. Being a normal, worked-up teenager, I was ready to experience physical closeness, while Jen had this vision of waiting until prom night. I argued that we had essentially been going together for over 9 years, and other kids our age were already being physical who were not half as serious about one another as Jen and I. She explained that her mother, grandmother, and even her great-grandmother had all shared their first time on the night of their senior prom, and she was determined to continue the tradition. I suggested that we could do other things that would leave her first time intact, but the most she would agree upon was letting me fondle her breast through her clothes. As you can imagine, I was quite frustrated most of the time. I had been enrolled in junior college courses from the ripe old age of 9, so I had no problem getting larger universities to transfer my credits. Since Jen and I wanted to attend the same school, we sat down and applied for scholarships from UC San Diego, our first choice, and the local university, the University of Florida, here in Florida. Although Jen was an excellent student, she did not quite fare as well as I did when it came to scholarship offers. She ended up not getting an offer from UC San Diego, but got a full ride from the University of Florida. I had offers from both schools, and although I had already decided on attending the University of Florida to be with Jen, I still had not got around to turning down California. Senior prom was quickly approaching, and I was ready to make it the best, most romantic night of our lives. My tux was rented, my car was tuned up to perfection, and our hotel room was booked. I even planned on giving Jen my great-grandmother's engagement ring as a symbol of my undying commitment to her. Everything was going perfectly until General Motors requested a meeting with me in Atlanta to discuss some patents that I had sent them earlier in the year. While taking one of my summer classes, I had dreamed up the idea for a more efficient pollution control device that would not only leave cleaner fuel emissions, but would nearly double the average horsepower that vehicles were able to achieve from the devices in use at that time. Since my invention adhered more toward the design GM was using, I sent them copies of my patents in hopes of striking a deal. It seemed that they were finally ready to talk. They wanted to fly me to Atlanta to meet with their top engineers and the vice president of operations for the entire U.S. branch of the corporation. This was an opportunity that I could not afford to pass up. The only fly in the ointment was that they wanted to schedule the meeting the day before our senior prom. I knew Jen would be devastated if I were forced to miss one of the most monumental nights of our life, and attending the prom would probably be a fun event as well. It took some wheeling and dealing, but I managed to secure airline transportation, which afforded me the time I needed in Atlanta to complete my talks with GM representatives and assured that I would be back in town early enough to go out with Jen. Since I knew very little about contractual law, my dad suggested that I meet up with an old friend of his from college who practiced in Atlanta and specialized in that very field. Mr. Hines insisted on tagging along with me to protect my interests, and I was sure glad he did. The guys from GM were noticeably unhappy that I had brought an attorney to our meeting. The first thing they did was try to downplay my work, suggesting that I overestimated my findings. They should have known better than to try and pull that on someone with my mechanical background. I knew the facts and figures I sent them were, if anything, understated, and I proceeded to tear them apart by proving so. Their next course of action was to try to lowball me with a lousy contract. This is where Mr. Hines's expertise came into play. We bartered for hours, each side threatening to leave multiple times. In the end, we hashed out an agreement that we could all live with. I left with a $750,000 check in my pocket, Mr. Hines's fees covered, and future royalty payments for every vehicle equipped with my new pollution control device. I also had a guaranteed position in the engineering department of GM's Florida branch, pending completion of my master's degree. Mr. Hines even worked it out where I could keep a portion of the royalties of anything I helped develop while working there in the future. Life could not have been any sweeter. I had just deposited $750,000 into my bank account. There was a solid salaried position waiting for me upon completion of my master's degree. I had a full-ride scholarship from a very prestigious university, and best of all, I would be sharing my first time in a few short hours with the girl who sometime in the very near future I intended to make my wife. I was on top of the world, and quite frankly, that should have been my first clue that disaster was about to strike. I was at the airport, anxiously awaiting the arrival of the plane that would be taking me back to Florida and into the arms of my soon-to-be lover. The only problem was the plane never showed up. It had experienced some technical difficulties at its previous location and was grounded indefinitely until the problems could be resolved. Trying to book another flight was useless, as due to the late arrival of the cancellation announcement, all seats were previously filled. With a heavy heart, I dialed Jen's number to relay the bad news. To say she was upset would be the understatement of the century. She had reservations about me flying out this close to prom to begin with. I had assured her that everything would work out fine, and now I was going back on my word and ruining her chances of continuing her family tradition. I tried to explain that this was an unforeseeable circumstance, and it was not really my fault. Yet she started crying and hung up on me before I got a chance to tell her of my plan to rent a car and drive back home myself. I tried calling her back, but she turned off her ringer on her cell phone, and all I got was her voicemail. Dealing with the car rental company was another fun-filled experience I would have preferred to avoid. Even though I had a perfect driving record and a major credit card, the a-holes questioned me at every turn due to my age and the fact that I had planned to travel so far with their precious vehicle. You would think I was trying to rent a Rolls-Royce instead of a Honda Accord for all the grief they put me through. I was finally on the road by 10:30 a.m., and by my calculations I should arrive back home just barely in time to get changed and go pick up Jen for the prom. That was when my tire blew out. I was able to steer the car safely away from traffic, but when I looked in the trunk for a spare, all I found was a donut. I knew it would not be safe to travel as far as I was planning to go on an inferior spare, so after changing it, I reluctantly turned the car around and headed back to the rental facility for an exchange. After arguing with the son of A behind the counter and then his immediate supervisor, I was finally given a replacement vehicle, and 45 minutes later, I was once again headed toward home. The delay in my departure time caused me to be stuck in Atlanta's noon rush hour traffic, which pushed back my ETA by over 2 hours. An accident tie-up involving a jackknifed semi and a truck taking cows to the slaughterhouse delayed me even further. By the time I finally made it back into town, the prom had already let out, and most of the people were in the process of leaving. By sheer luck, I spotted Kara's car in the school lot and figured Jen had borrowed it to attend the dance by herself. Finding an empty spot with a clear view of her vehicle, I decided to park and wait for her to come out in hopes of at least being able to salvage some aspect of our special evening. When the lot was all but cleared out, I came to the conclusion that Jen must have hitched a ride to one of the after-prom parties with one of her friends. Although I did not like the fact of her partying without me, I knew that trying to track her down would be a difficult task to accomplish. Since I was tired from driving all day, I decided to recline the seat back and take a short nap while I waited for Jen to return. I figured the noise of the vehicle dropping her off would wake me up, and I knew her mom would need her car back by tomorrow, so I did not suspect that she would be out too late. The sound of a car door slamming woke me up sometime in the wee hours of the morning, and I looked up to see Jen stepping out of the passenger side of a vehicle owned by Travis Cole. Travis was known as the school hound. The guy actually kept a queen-size air mattress and a battery-operated pump in the bed of his pickup truck. He told his parents it was for camping, but he told us guys that it was cheaper than having to rent a motel room. I believe the latter. Jen's clothes looked like they had been slept in, but I quickly discovered that was not the case when Travis climbed in the bed of his truck and came back with what looked like a very sheer pair of black underwear, which he reluctantly handed back to Jen. I saw her bend down and step into them before they briefly kissed and went their separate ways. The word crush did not even begin to describe what I was feeling, as I was now almost certain that Jen had given her first time to someone else. The fact that she chose the school makeout hound to be physical with made her betrayal hurt all the more. I was always taught that a man had to be tough and to suck it up, but in all honesty, I cried that night, knowing that things between Jenna and me would never again be the same. After I had swapped out the rental car for my own, I arrived back home around 5 a.m. and crashed. I had a fitful night's sleep as images of Jen and Travis's physical encounter haunted my dreams, turning them into vivid nightmares from which there was seemingly no escape neither in my cognizant state nor my subconscious one. It was after 1 p.m. the next afternoon before I finally managed to crawl out of bed. Even though I had literally slept for hours, I got very little rest. I checked my missed messages only to see that Jenna had been trying to contact me for the last 3 hours. I definitely had no desire to talk to her. After relieving myself in the bathroom, I made my way downstairs to try and get something in my empty stomach. I felt physically ill after witnessing Jenna's betrayal, so food was completely out of the question at this point. It was a gamble if I could manage to keep down a lousy cup of coffee. "Did you and Jenna have a nice time last night?" my mother asked. "I had a lousy night. If you want to know about Jenna, you will have to ask her yourself," I stated a bit bitterly. "What do you mean? Did the two of you not go to prom together?" she asked. "No. I did not make it back from Atlanta in time to attend it," I replied. "Oh, that is terrible. I will bet Jenna was really upset that the two of you were not able to go," Mom said. "You could say that," I told her. "So, I take it you will be going over to her house to apologize today," Mom teased. "When hell freezes over," I blurted out. "What did you say?" Mom asked in a shocked tone of voice. "You heard me. I will apologize to Jenna when hell freezes over," I exclaimed. "What is going on with the two of you?" Mom asked. "I do not want to talk about it. And if she should happen to call here, I do not want to talk to her either," I answered in a huff. I headed back upstairs to get cleaned up before going to the shop. My uncle's rule was he may have a staff full of grease monkeys, but that did not mean we could dress like slobs. I worked myself into exhaustion that evening, desperately trying to ascertain a precious few moments out of the day where my mind was not plagued by my problems with Jenna. I reluctantly headed back home that evening, only to find her waiting for me in the driveway. Every instinct I had told me to just drive on by, but I had one nagging question that just needed to be answered before I could completely cut Jenna out of my life for good. That still did not mean that I wanted to talk to her, though. "Why are you here, Jenna?" I asked in a disgusted tone of voice. "I got your messages," she said. "Oh, you mean the ones I left after you hung up on me?" I asked. "Yeah. Did you really drive all the way here in a rented car?" she asked. "Yes," I answered. "When did you get back?" she asked, a bit nervously. "About 11:30 last night. Prom had already let out, but I did see your mother's car parked in the lot, though you were nowhere to be found," I replied, wanting to see what she would say. "Oh, I left the dance with a friend," she said, hoping I would not question her any more about her whereabouts. "Really? Would that be the same friend who drove you back to your car this morning, the one who had to crawl in the bed of his pickup truck to retrieve your underwear?" I asked gruffly. "Who told you that?" she wanted to know. "Two very reliable sources, my right eye and my left one. They both confirmed that it was you getting out of the passenger side of Travis Cole's vehicle around 4 a.m. this morning. I guess you were just too busy getting dressed to notice that my rental car was parked just 2 rows behind you. We were supposed to give our first time to each other last night. I still have mine. Can you say the same thing?" I challenged. When she refused to look me in the eye, I had my answer. "I have just one last question for you, Jenna, and you had better not lie to me. Were you a willing participant last night, or did Travis force you to be physical with him?" I wanted to know. I was a little drunk, but no, he did not force me. I am so sorry, Caleb. I honestly never meant for any of this to happen, she exclaimed through the tears in her eyes. Go home, Jenna. There is nothing here for you anymore, I said as I walked past her into the house, locking the door behind me. I went upstairs to bed, leaving Jenna sobbing on the front step. It was not 10 minutes later that my mother burst into my room, demanding to know what I had done to Jenna. I told her we had broken up and that I was refusing to discuss the reason why. Of course, we argued about it for several minutes before I said that I was very tired and needed to get some sleep. All right, but we are going to talk about this in the morning, my mother warned. No, Mom, we will not, I said, leaving no doubt in her mind that I meant what I was saying. Since I was convinced that Jenna was no longer a part of my future, I was not tied down to attending the University of Florida. So the next morning I made a call to the Dean of Admissions at UC San Diego to inform them that I was graciously accepting their offer of a full scholarship. I mentioned my desire about attending summer classes as well, and we worked out a deal where I would be leaving for California the day after my graduation ceremony. I figured that my only chance of getting over Jenna was if I was not seeing her on a daily basis, and by attending UCSD, I knew that would not be happening. I hated the thought of leaving my job in my uncle's shop, but this was the university that I originally wanted to attend, and the only reason I was willing to apply to the University of Florida was because of Jenna. My parents always loved Jenna, and since I did not want to tarnish their opinion of her by revealing the cause of our breakup, it was I who became the bad guy. Mom pushed relentlessly, trying to get me to discuss my problems with Jenna, and it was not until I threatened to leave for California early and miss graduation that she relented and backed off. I am sure she could tell from my expression that I would have done it. At school, I avoided Jenna but shadowed Travis. That a-hole was going to pay. I had no delusions about Jenna being the one who really betrayed me. But Travis knew she was my girl, and he still went after her, choosing to prey on a weak moment. I was not about to let him off the hook for it. Through a bit of eavesdropping, I learned that his favorite spot to take a date was Sunset Bluff. It was a secluded area at the top of a rather steep incline overlooking the ocean. He boasted that the romantic setting was the perfect aphrodisiac to ensure a night of making out. I found out that Travis had a hot date scheduled for Friday night, and unsurprisingly, it too was with another guy's girlfriend. Having a vague idea of what I was planning to do, I borrowed one of the cars we were working on in the shop and drove it out to the rendezvous point with my bag of accessories on the seat next to me. By the time I had arrived, the action had already begun. Travis's truck had a topper on it with closable curtains so that he could prevent people from spying on him and his lady friends. Unfortunately for him, this also prevented being able to see out the windows as well. Donning a pair of work gloves, I crept up to the driver's side of his vehicle and, as carefully as I could, put his stick-shift truck into neutral. Next, I released the parking brake and, with all my might, pushed the truck forward until it started to roll down the hill toward the water, rapidly gaining momentum along the way. By the time they realized the truck was moving, it was too late to prevent its collision with the water. Of course, not wanting anyone's harm on my conscience, I stuck around to make sure they both escaped the truck, before quietly returning to my borrowed vehicle and heading back to the shop. On my way back, I took a prepaid burner phone I had recently purchased and used it to text the number of a cop I knew would be on duty that night. All of the police in our area took their cars to my uncle's shop for repair. Therefore, I was friends with and had the personal numbers of nearly everyone on the force. By texting from a prepaid phone, I could pretend to be a disgruntled senior citizen who discovered teenagers swimming without suits in a restricted area. The only downside to my plan was that I would not be able to watch as the police confronted Travis and his lady friend. That would have been a far too risky venture to attempt. My plan turned out better than I could have possibly imagined. Travis's parents had heard rumors flying about his rolling makeout setup. He assured them this was just a joke made up by one of the guys at school and had no merit. After they had to bring a fresh set of clothes to the police station and having to face the angry parents of the girl, he was with Travis's mom, and Dad no longer had any doubts as to the validity of the rumor they had heard. Since there was no proof to the contrary, the entire incident was ruled an accident. Therefore, the insurance company did pay up. But Travis's parents refused to replace his rolling setup, forcing him to break his old bicycle out of storage. No one, including Travis, even remotely suspected that I had anything to do with his misfortune, But the look Jenna gave me the following day at school told me that she knew I was the one responsible. Graduation day was not how I had pictured it to be, as I no longer felt like I had anything to celebrate. I forced my parents into downgrading the party they had planned to a quiet family dinner at home. Jenna came up and wished me good luck. I returned the sentiment, but when she went to hug me, I refused, causing her to run out of the room crying. Since neither Jenna nor I had revealed what caused our breakup to anyone, I was again looked upon as the bad guy because I refused to let Jenna touch me. This put an even bigger damper on what was supposed to be one of the most memorable days of my life. I settled into my new life in California, and although I still suffered from a heavy heart, the workload allowed me to focus on something other than my failed love life. I was, for the first time, starting to make friends with people my own age other than Jenna, and although it was not the same as having a girlfriend, it was still a welcome change from what I previously experienced. One afternoon, I was returning to my dorm room and stopped to knock because I suspected my friend Kelly might be in there changing. Kelly liked to dress in a certain manner that really was not appropriate attire for the classroom. No one in our group had a problem with her clothing of preference, but since her dorm room was on the other side of campus and we had all planned on going out that evening, I offered to let her store a bag of clothes in my room so she would not have to go back to hers to change. What I found waiting for me upon entering my dorm room was Kelly alongside my very angry-looking mother. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I asked, shocked that she had come all this way just to see me without giving me any advanced warning of her arrival. "I need to talk to you in private, if you do not mind," she said, glaring at Kelly. "Kelly, it looks like something has come up. Please give my regards to the rest of our group," I said. "Sure thing, hun. If you get done early, you know where to meet us." "Good luck," she said, slapping me on the butt as she walked by. "It was nice meeting you, Mom. I hope to see you again sometime." Kelly smirked as she left the room. "Is that what you gave up Jenna for, a common flirt?" Mom asked. "Kelly is not a flirt in the way you mean. I admit she dresses provocatively, and she is a hopeless teaser, but so is her life partner, Linda. They both love to tease and shock people, but they are very devoted to one another and would never cheat on each other," I told her. "You mean that girl is Dash?" She could not finish her sentence. "Yes, Mom, she is not straight. I am not concerned about her orientation, only that Kelly and her partner Linda have both become very good friends of mine while I have been here," I said. "Is that why she was getting dressed in your room when I got here?" Mom asked. "Kelly's dorm room is all the way across campus. She always dresses more conservatively for class, and I told her she could change in here because we were all planning on going out tonight," I explained. "And just how many times have you been out with them?" my mother questioned. "A few," I admitted. "Did you come all this way to grill me on my relationship with Kelly and Linda?" "No, actually, I came to talk about Jenna," Mom answered. "Mom, cannot you give it a rest? Jenna and I are over. You need to learn to accept that," I told her. "Jenna's pregnant," Mom blurted out. "Wow," I exclaimed, as the reality of the situation came back to take another stab at my already broken heart. "W was right. I came here to find out what you plan to do about it," she asked. "What do you want me to do?" Mom sent her a card saying congratulations. I asked hastily. The sound of a slap echoed through the room like a bullet as the palm of her hand made direct contact with my face. "I thought I raised you to take responsibility for your actions," she yelled. At this point, I was so mad that I did not think about what I was saying before I spoke. "I would like to know how in the hell Jenna being pregnant by some other guy is in any way my responsibility?" I asked before I could stop myself. "What do you mean some other guy, kid? The two of you have been going together since you were 8, Mom reminded me. "Did Jenna tell you it was your child?" "No. She went to stay with her aunt, and her mother found a positive pregnancy test in her garbage while she was cleaning. She immediately called me, and I booked the first flight here," my mom explained. Knowing that the cat was already out of the bag, I decided to just come clean with Mom about everything. "The reason Jenna and I broke up is because I caught her cheating on me," I said. "Jenna is seeing someone else?" "I do not believe it," she told me. "I did not either until I saw her step out of another guy's truck and bend over to put on her underwear," I explained. We stood there in silence for a few minutes, Mom obviously floored at what I had just revealed to her. Finally, after starting to regain her composure, she asked, "Isn't there any possibility that the child might be yours?" "No, Mom, there is not," I answered with a glum expression. "How can you be so sure? Birth control is not 100% effective, you know," she reminded me. Birth control might not be, but abstinence is, I replied. What are you talking about? You and Jenna have been going together for years. Are you trying to tell me that you have never she started to ask. Done it, I said, finishing her sentence. No, Mom. Believe it or not, we have not. Jenna had this hang-up about waiting until prom night to share our first time. I guess it is some tradition in her family. I had everything all set to be with her that evening, but my plane was canceled. Not wanting to miss my big night, I rented a car and tried to drive straight through. My tire had a blowout, and the only spare available was a donut. To make a long story short, it took forever to get a different vehicle and then get back on the road. With all the traffic delays I hit, I ended up not reaching the prom until after it was already over. I saw Kara's car parked in the lot, and all I could think to do was wait for Jenna to come back for it. I sat there for hours until I saw Travis Cole's truck pull up and Jenna got out of the passenger side. They talked for a few minutes, and then I watched Travis crawl in the bed of his truck to retrieve a pair of underwear, which Jenna proceeded to step into. Now she is pregnant, and I am still a damn virgin. I will tell you this much. I do not plan on staying that way for very long. I will not be stupid and get some girl pregnant, but I will not go on pining over Jenna while she is having another man's kid, I said, as my emotions started to overtake me. I do not know what to say, Mom admitted. Look, I chose not to tell anyone because I did not want to soil Jenna's reputation. I do not want to hurt her, but I cannot have people going around thinking I have abandoned my own child, I said. Now, if you will excuse me, I think you have the answers you came for. I am going to go see if I can find something to put on my face and try to catch up with my friends, I said, emotionally drained from discussing my situation with Jenna. I am sorry that I hit you, son, Mom said, with a tear streaming down her face. I know, Mom, and I am not really mad at you. It is just, this whole situation continues to get worse, I said as I went over and hugged my mother. I probably would have come to the same conclusion that you did under the circumstances. Mom, what am I going to do about Kara? I know she blames me for causing this mess. I think, when confronted, Jenna will admit the truth, but I do not want her thinking that the baby is mine. I told her, why don't we let Jenna and her mother talk this out, and then I will call Kara afterwards and have a chat with her on your behalf. I'm sure once she hears the truth, she will be able to understand why you felt you had to leave, Mom said. So that's how we left it. I continued to advance in my classes and try to get on with my life. I dated and, of course, eventually lost my virginity, but I never found the special connection I once shared with the little girl who stole my heart that day at the amusement park. I decided to quit trying to find a connection with these women and concentrate my efforts on casual dating. If truth be known, I wasn't ending up much better than Travis Cole, though I never knowingly dated anyone who I knew was already in a committed relationship. By the time I had completed my master's degree, I had been with half a dozen women multiple times, and I was no happier than when I first came to UC San Diego. Mom, Dad, and even my Uncle Mark flew to California to watch me graduate. It was agreed that I would temporarily be moving back home, as my new position was now waiting for me at General Motors. They had implemented my patents, which were now beginning to generate a rather large sum of money. Best of all, I had some updated ideas that I couldn't wait to get started on. The only reservation I had about moving back to Florida was that I was scared of bumping into Jenna again. I had heard through Mom that she decided to stay in the area and raise her son with the help of her mother. I never kept track of Travis and couldn't tell you if he was alive or not. I had been working at GM for about a month when I was introduced to a very outgoing and quite attractive young woman by the name of Paula Brown. She was a recent engineering graduate like me, only she was a bit older, since she had gone back to school to get her degree. Paula was a powerhouse and not afraid to take on even the president of the company in a debate if she thought she was right. She and I first locked heads over some of my new designs, and we were still arguing an hour after everyone else had left for the day. The woman drove me completely insane, but I had to respect her, as some of her suggestions actually had merit. Cheese Pie had been my favorite pizzeria from as far back as I can remember. I craved the place when I was living in California, and now that I was back home again, I was going to indulge. After stuffing my face with some of the tastiest creations I'd had in years, I was coming out the door when I noticed a woman struggling with a basket full of clothes at the laundromat next door. It was Kara. I rushed over to give her a hand, and she thanked me profusely as we loaded her car, the same one she had before I left with freshly dried clothes. It's so great to see you again, Caleb. How long have you been back in town? She asked. I've been home just over a month now. I graduated with my master's in engineering and already had a job lined up at GM. How are you doing, Miss Hart? And why are you lugging clothes to the laundromat instead of washing them at home? I asked curiously. Caleb, it was one thing for you to call me Miss Hart when you were 9, but now it just makes me feel old. Please call me Kara. As for your questions, I'm doing fine, though it is a little hectic at home. Jenna and her son William are living with me, and having a 6-year-old running around the house can sure keep you hopping. I'm at the laundromat on a Saturday afternoon because the dryer is not heating properly, and we haven't been able to get it fixed yet. I wash the clothes at home and bring them here to dry, she explained. That must create quite a hassle for you. How long has it been broken? I asked. It's been down for about 4 weeks now. We've been meaning to get it fixed, but Jenna's job at the restaurant is only part-time, and money has been a little tight lately, she confessed, a bit red-faced. I could always stop over and take a look at it. I volunteered, not really sure why I was doing it. That's sweet of you to offer. But like I said, I can't really afford a repairman right now, she reminded me. Oh, come on, Kara. When have I ever charged you for anything except parts when I worked on something of yours? I asked. It was one thing to have you helping us out when you and Jenna were dating. Now it would feel like we were taking advantage of you, she argued. That's just plain silly. You have always been like a second mother to me. Just because I am no longer dating your daughter doesn't mean I don't still care about you, I protested. I still feel like we'd be using you, she exclaimed. Is that really the reason, or are you still mad about what happened between me and Jenna? I asked, looking her straight in the eye. Oh heavens, no. I admit I was upset with you at first, but when Jenna explained what really happened, then it was her I was mad at. I must confess that I did express to her many times my concerns about the two of you being so exclusive from such an early age, but I never thought that she would go out and be physical with another guy while you were still dating, she explained to me. Well, that's basically water under the bridge now. When would be the best time for me to work on your dryer with the least amount of people underfoot? I asked. Are you asking when you could drop by that Jenna won't be there? She questioned. Yes. I'm sorry, Kara. I want to help you out, but I am just not ready to face Jenna yet, I replied honestly. She would really love to see you, Kara told me. There is a part of me that is dying to see her again too, but it's the other side of me that I'm concerned about, I said. Jenna leaves for work at 2:30 p.m. this afternoon. You could drop by any time after that, but I must warn you, I will be babysitting. Is having William there going to be a problem for you? She asked. Not as long as you keep him away from me while I'm working so he doesn't get hurt, I told her. Pulling up to Kara's house was like going back in time. I started to get flashbacks of happier moments the two of us shared. When I arrived in California, I was lost without Jenna. It took a lot of prodding from Kelly and Linda before I finally broke down and told them my story. For some reason, I found it very easy to confide in them. I guess it was the fact that I felt safe. They were both hopeless flirts, but I knew that would be as far as it went. Maybe because they were not into men, I didn't feel I had to act all macho like I did with the guys or worry about sending out the wrong signals like I do when I am with heterosexual women. I could just be myself among them without feeling like I was being judged for doing it. I think that made all the difference. After ringing the bell, I waited at the door with my toolbox in hand for someone to answer. Kara appeared moments later with a little blonde 6-year-old boy in tow that reminded me so much of his mother, I actually got misty-eyed for a moment. During our introduction, I stooped down on my knee so that I was height level with William before offering my hand for him to shake. This seemed to put the little tyke at ease, as he bombarded me with a million questions about who I was and why I was there. It took me no time to diagnose the problem, and I called a local parts store I knew to see if they had what I needed on hand. As luck would have it, they did, so I set out to do a quick parts run, returning a short time later with the items I needed to get their dryer back up and running properly again. By the time I got back, Kara had already started preparing supper. She asked me if I would like to join them, but being still full from overindulging at lunch, I begged off. She understood, saying that they were only having hot dogs and mac and cheese anyway. She told me that if she knew in advance that I might be stopping by, she would have planned a much better meal. She did say that William had requested this particular menu. I had just finished replacing the defective part and was starting to put the dryer back together when I heard some type of commotion coming from the kitchen. A few seconds later, Kara was screaming for help. I dropped what I was doing and raced to the kitchen, only to find a little boy desperately gasping for breath and not being able to find any. "Caleb, he's choking." I tried slapping him on the back, but it didn't help, she exclaimed in a panic. I quickly grabbed Will from behind and placed my hands over his abdomen like they showed us in the health class I had taken, telling him to relax. I pressed my hands together and jerked his body upward in an effort to dislodge the food stuck in his throat. I had to repeat the procedure 3 times, squeezing his body harder and harder, before he spit up the half-eaten hot dog and began to cry. Now that I knew he was breathing again, I started to worry that I had accidentally hurt him by pressing too hard. I insisted on taking him to the hospital to be checked out, even offering to pay for it myself since I felt responsible. "Caleb, Will's health care is covered by the state, but I think you're right. We need to get him checked out to make sure nothing is broken or that his esophagus didn't get damaged while he was choking," she replied. The thought of something being broken had me physically ill. I would never intentionally hurt William, and I just hoped Jenna would believe that. Kara wanted me to drive, as she was still too shaken up over what had happened. We took her car, as it already had Will's child's seat in it. Although I did make it to the hospital safely, I wouldn't say that I complied with the posted speed limits while doing it. I immediately rushed into the ER, acting like a crazed fool, bellowing for assistance. Because William was a child, he was given preferred treatment over some of the other patients. We tried to assure him that everything was going to be okay, but of course, being young and scared, the little guy wanted his mommy. Kara had talked to Jenna on the phone and told me that she was going to have one of her friends drop her off at the hospital. She still couldn't afford a car of her own. I was a nervous wreck with the thought of seeing Jenna again, but I wasn't about to leave the hospital without knowing if Will was going to be all right, so I just sucked it up and hoped for the best. Kara and I were in the examination room with Will when Jenna arrived. "Mommy," Will said, happy to see her. "Hi, honey. How are you feeling?" she asked while hugging him gently enough to ensure that he wasn't hurt in the process. "My chest hurts a little, and my throat is sore too," he complained. Just then the doctor came into the room with a set of x-rays in his hand. "Well, folks, I have some good news. It seems little William here is free to go," he told us. "So, is he going to be all right, Doc?" both Jenna and I asked in unison. "Yes," he replied, chuckling at our uniformity. "His ribs will be a bit sore for a few days, and his throat is a little swollen, but that's to be expected. It was a lucky thing you were there, son, because the x-rays showed that the blockage was pretty far down in his throat, and someone not quite as strong may not have been able to pry it loose. Tell me, who taught you the Heimlich maneuver?" "I learned it in my health class at UC San Diego," I replied. "Well, I don't know what you do for a living, but you would make one fine paramedic. I don't think I could have done a better job myself," the doctor apprised me. Without warning, Jenna turned and threw her arms around me, burying her head in my chest. Through her sobs, I could barely make out the words, "Thank you for saving my son." My body must have been operating on autopilot, as I seemed to have no control over my arms as they reached for her, my head lowering to place a soothing kiss upon her hair in a gesture of reassurance that everything was going to be okay. After all the paperwork was filed, the 3 of us were heading back to their house when I suddenly got an idea. I asked if they would mind if I stopped off at the convenience store on the way back to pick up something I needed. Of course, neither one of them had a problem with this, so I dashed into the shop and came back a few minutes later with all the ingredients I would need to create a special treat. "What did you buy, Uncle Caleb?" Will asked. "Well, honey, it's not nice to ask people what they bought," Jen said. "No, that's all right, Will. I just had to go pick up your medicine," I told him with a serious look. "Medicine?" he replied with a scrunched-up face. "That's right. The doctor said that since your throat was a bit swollen, you should put something soft and cold on it. So I bought all the makings for my world-famous milkshakes. You did say that chocolate was your favorite flavor, right?" I asked, smiling. "Oh boy. Thank you, Uncle Caleb," he replied happily. "You're welcome, kiddo," I said. "How about the rest of you? Chocolate shakes all around." After receiving favorable replies from Jenna and her mother, I went about making a pitcher of frothy, ice-cold milkshakes that were very smooth on the throat. After the mess was cleaned up, I excused myself to finish working on their dryer. I wasn't overly happy, but not exactly surprised, when Jenna appeared at the door. "Do you mind some company?" she asked. "Actually, I'm just finishing up here," I replied. "Do you have to rush off right away, or could you stay and talk for a while?" Jenna wanted to know. "Well, I really should be going, I said. I understand. When I heard you were back in town, I wanted to stop over to see you, but didn't think I would be welcome. The fact that you came over to fix my mom's dryer when you knew I wouldn't be home tells me I was right, she said with a shaky voice. What do you expect me to say, Jenna? Part of me feels I should wrap my arms around you and hold you forever. Another part says I need to get in my car and drive all the way back to California just to get away from you. The rational side of my head tells me I can't do either, but that doesn't stop me from wanting to. I try to explain. I know what you mean about mixed feelings. I've waited 6 years for a chance to talk with you again, and now that you're here, I don't know what to say. The words "I'm sorry" and "I missed you" seem so inadequate, yet they are the only ones that come to mind, Jenna admitted. Maybe it's best if we didn't say anything, I suggested. We tried that for 6 years. Do you feel any better? She asked. I thought maybe I did a little anyway. Then I saw you standing in the doorway, and all those memories came floating back, I said. Not all of them were bad, though. We did have some good times, right? She asked me, tears streaming down her face. Most of them were good, and they are the ones that haunt me the most, I told her. I know we can never go back to the way things were, but do you think there is any way we could at least be friends again? I've missed you so much, Caleb, she pleaded. I'm not sure that would be a good idea, Jenna. Don't you think it would be better to try and forget about each other and work towards moving on with our lives? I asked. We have been friends since we were 9, Caleb. How do you expect us to forget over 11 years' worth of memories? She asked. I don't know, Jenna. I don't have any answers, only questions. I've missed you too. I want to be friends again just as much as you do, but is that really fair for either one of us? We both know we want more from each other than just mere friendship. Right now that can't happen, and I'm not sure that it ever will, I said. Can't we at least try, Caleb? We're not the same people we were 6 years ago. We've done a lot of growing up since then. Say that you'll give us a chance to get to know one another again, please, she begged. All right, Jenna, you win. We will take the time to get to know each other again, but only if we start as friends first. That means no kissing or hand-holding or telling one another, I love you. We will not be mutually exclusive, nor will we be spending all of our free time together. Since I'm afraid to be alone with you for long periods of time, whenever we go out, we will be taking someone else with us. As friends, we will not have any secrets about dating. If we begin seeing someone else, we tell each other about it. If we are intimate with another person, we tell each other that too. I don't care how much it hurts. I am not going through what I did 6 years ago, I stated firmly. I can agree to all of your terms, but I won't promise not to get jealous if you begin dating someone else, she told me honestly. Neither one of us can control our feelings, Jenna. Just keeping our actions in check will be difficult enough, I said. When I left Kara's house that night, I didn't know whether to jump for joy or kick myself. Trust was a big issue with me, and Jenna did more than merely break it, she shattered it. I loved her once, and, if truth be known, still did. But could I ever learn to trust her again? I guess time would tell. Jenna and I started getting together every few weekends. Most of the time, we would take William to either the zoo or the park. Sometimes we would go out to dinner, usually at McDonald's. At other times, Jenna would cook something for us at their place. Kara would join us once in a while, but she had started dating some guy in town. She wouldn't tell us who it was, but said when the time was right, all would be revealed. I really enjoyed being employed by GM. The work was challenging, and I felt respected by most of my colleagues. The one problem was Paula. After we initially butted heads, she became impossible to read. One day she would be as sweet as sugar, complimenting me on my ideas and praising my work. The next day she was a bear, saying that I needed to grow up and concentrate more on my future. I didn't know what her problem was, but needless to say, I wasn't overly thrilled when my boss decided to send the both of us to California to meet with the governor. Due to their smog problem, the state government had become very interested in our advancements in energy emissions. Since I had developed most of these products and was a graduate of UC San Diego, it seemed only fitting that I be chosen to represent GM during these talks. If the governor was impressed enough with our pollution control devices, he might be persuaded to initiate provisions that would give government subsidies to anyone buying a new GM vehicle. This represented billions of dollars for GM, and since I still received royalties off every vehicle sold with these devices attached, I'd be making quite a chunk of change from it myself. I completely understood my involvement with this deal, but I questioned my boss as to why he thought it necessary to pair me with Paula. Caleb, You are a smart guy, and I need you there to answer any technical questions the governor or his staff may have. Paula is more outgoing, even flirtatious at times. Sending one of you without the other would be a mistake. The both of you working together might just land us this deal. I have already talked to Paula, and she has agreed to put aside any petty bickering so that the two of you can provide a united front in this matter, my boss said. My relationship with Jenna had been slowly progressing to the point where we had talked through a great deal of our issues. We still weren't going out as a couple, but my anger over her cheating on me in high school had cooled considerably, and I no longer felt uncomfortable being around her. We discussed my trip and the fact that I would be traveling with Paula. Caleb, I know we are not officially dating, and we both are free to see other people. I told you that I would always be honest about my feelings, so here goes. I don't like the idea of you spending 3 days in some motel in California with another woman, she admitted. I'm not too crazy about the idea either, but this deal could mean big bucks for the company and maybe even financial security for me. I have to go, I told her. I know, but I still don't like it, she said. I told you that we can't always help how we feel just so long as we control what we do about it, I reminded her. GM spared no expense in putting us up in a very swanky motel. We met with not only the governor but the state Senate and House representatives. In the end, the deal was a go. Paula was brilliant. I never saw a woman work a room with such ease. She reflected style and elegance and had all the men she encountered practically eating out of her hand. The word magnetic didn't even begin to describe it. I can't believe we pulled that off, she said to me as we sat across the table from one another, enjoying our victory nightcap. I know. You were brilliant back there, I told her. Hell, most of that stuff was your idea, she reminded me. True, but you were damn good at selling it, I replied. We make a pretty good team, Caleb. Why don't you order us up a bottle of this stuff, and we take this little celebration back upstairs your room or mine? She asked. Both, I said. Oh, how kinky you want to crash in each of our beds then, she wanted to know. No, Paula. What I meant is that you go to your room, and I'll go to mine, I said. Why? Are you seeing someone else? She asked. Not officially, I answered. What does that mean? She wanted to know. So I gave Paula a brief overview of my relationship with Jenna, leaving out the reason why we initially broke up. So you are not sleeping with her, and neither of you are mutually exclusive with the other, she asked. That's right, I told her. What's the problem then? She wanted to know. I don't date people I work with, I explained. As long as one of us isn't over another, GM doesn't have any rules against it, she argued. It's a personal decision, I told her. Well, break it, Caleb. We are good together. We both have the potential to take our careers all the way to the top. You have way too much talent to get tied down to a domestic situation and get roped into playing dad to some woman's kid. It even sounds like she's not giving you much in the romance department. A man needs more than that. Come upstairs with me, and I will make you forget all about Little Miss Homemaker, she offered. The scariest thing is, if I would have had a few more drinks in me, I probably would have taken Paula up on her offer. As it was, it took every ounce of my willpower to deny her charms. I could now understand more clearly how easy it was for Jenna to have fallen prey to a guy like Travis, charming, persuasive, and knowing how to push all the right buttons. Had I not lived through the pain of Jenna's little one-night lapse, I would have probably set a new speed record for 2 people getting from the hotel bar up to the bedroom. The managerial team at GM was thrilled with the success and unofficially deemed us the golden couple. I knew that this status would probably lead to more overnight travels with Paula in the future, as I'm sure the company would want to capitalize on our methods of success. I got together with Jenna a few days after I returned home, and she seemed rather nervous when I asked to talk with her in private. I told Jenna about the success of our trip and then the part of how Paula tried to seduce me. Did you? Jenna asked, her lip quivering with emotion. I admitted that I was tempted, and in the end, it was a struggle to resist. Paula was right in one aspect, though. I do need more than I have been getting from our relationship, I said. So you want to break up with me and start dating her? She asked as tears came to her eyes. No, I want to start dating you, I told her with a grin on my face. You mean it? Jenna asked as she threw her arms around me and cried. Yes, Jenna, I do. I'm still not ready for us to be fully intimate just yet, but I want to start going out as a couple. I want to hold you and caress you and show the world that we belong to each other. This would mean that we are monogamous with each other. Can you handle being my girl exclusively? I asked. I have been your girl exclusively since you agreed on us being friends again. This does mean we can kiss now, right? She asked. Honey, you're damn right it does, I said, initiating our first of many passionate embraces for that evening alone. The deal with California brought other populated states with pollution control problems to follow suit. Of course, in the wake of our previous success, the golden couple was always chosen to travel together to hash out these deals. In the office, Paula was fairly tame. On the road, however, she was practically a barracuda, trying anything imaginable to get me to succumb to her womanly wiles. We got back from completing our third major deal, and once again I was able to resist sleeping with Paula, though just barely. I think I had become an obsession with her. She was certain we would make the perfect power couple, and she was determined to convince me of it as well. My date with Jenna that next Saturday night was somewhat of a mystery. She said she had a surprise for me, and I thought I had a vague idea of what it was. I must admit, I was not expecting what I found when I arrived at her mother's place to pick her up. Jenna answered the door wearing a baby blue evening gown that was quite elegant and fit her frame to a T. She looked gorgeous. You look amazing, Jenna. What's the occasion? I asked, with a lump in both my throat and my chest. Why? It's our senior prom, silly. Your tux is in the bedroom. Now go get cleaned up. We have reservations at the chateau for dinner in an hour, and the dance starts at 9, she told me. What's going on, Jenna? I asked. Honey, 7 years ago today should have been one of the happiest nights of our lives. Instead, it turned out to be a disaster. I want to try again. I have reservations for a nice meal. We can go out dancing later at one of the clubs, and if you feel up to it, I even rented the room number you booked 7 years ago that we were never able to use, she told me. Baby, no matter how much we want to, nobody can relive the past, I said. I don't want to relive the past, sweetheart. I hate even thinking about that awful night. What I want to do is give us a chance to live the evening we should have had before your plane was canceled and my stupidity screwed it up. Please, Caleb, do this for me. Do this for us, she begged. I knew that Jenna had spent a lot of time, effort, and most of all money she couldn't really afford to make this night possible, so I was not about to disappoint her by refusing to go. Since I had already showered before I arrived, it didn't take long to change into my monkey suit and for us to be on our way. Jenna had packed an overnight bag with some of the essentials we would need for our little excursion back in time. I took note that she had included a big box of protection in our luggage. I had come to the conclusion months ago that I still truly loved Jenna, and despite everything that happened, I always had. The last thing I wanted to do was disappoint her, but every time I considered being fully intimate with Jenna, something was holding me back. For the life of me, though, I just couldn't place my finger on what the problem was. Because of the way we were dressed, Jenna and I attracted quite a bit of attention that night. The places we visited were nice, but they weren't tuxedo and prom dress nice. To save time, Jenna and I just told whoever was bold enough to ask that we had just come from a wedding. Dinner was superb, although Jenna and I argued about who was going to pay when the bill came. In the end, she won out but relented enough to let me leave the tip. I knew I would have to find some way to pay her back for this evening. I could afford something like this, but I knew she really could not. After leaving the restaurant, we ended up at a Floridian hot spot called the Right Foot. We really were having a great time when I looked up to see a group of women, most of which I'd never seen before, being seated at a large table next to ours. One of the ladies present looked all too familiar, as it was none other than Paula Brown. Of course, being dressed as we were, there was no way she didn't notice us. Hello, may I cut in? Paula asked. Not tonight, Paula, I said, rather annoyed. I'm here with my girlfriend, I told her bluntly. You look really nice, Caleb. If you don't mind me asking, what's the occasion? She wanted to know. We just came from a friend's wedding, I said. Oh, how romantic. I'll bet the two of you don't get to play dress up too often, she said, directing her remark toward Jenna. Caleb, aren't you going to be a gentleman and introduce us? Paula asked. Paula Brown, this is my girlfriend Jenna Hart. Jenna, this is Paula Brown. She works at GM with me, I said, becoming more upset by the minute. Oh, Caleb, don't be so modest. We do more than just work there, dear. At GM, we're known as the Golden Couple. We travel all over the U.S. together, just the two of us, wooing customers and bringing in those multi-million-dollar deals. Isn't that right, Caleb, honey? She purred. You do all the wooing, Paula. I'm just the nerd they send to explain the technical stuff. I said. Now, if you will excuse us, Jenna and I need to get back to our date, I added, in an effort to get away from Paula. Is she always that bad? Jenna asked me while we were dancing. No, usually she's worse. She seems to have developed some sort of obsession with me, I said. She is a very beautiful woman, Jenna noted. On the outside, I will agree with you. But you just witnessed what she's really like on the inside. The more I'm around her, the less I want to be, I admitted. I excused myself to use the restroom, and when I came back, both girls were in such a heated conversation that neither one of them noticed my return. Face it, girlfriend, you are just not in the same league as people like us, Paula sneered. Caleb is not cut out to be domestic. He is special, and you, my dear, are holding him back. If you care for him at all, break it off tonight and save yourself the anguish of losing him later when he finally gets tired of playing dad and wants a real woman in his bed. I may not be able to compete with you in looks, and I have no doubt that you are great in the bedroom, as you obviously have had plenty of practice, Jenna said evenly. But I wasn't shortchanged in life. God gave me a gift that you simply don't have the ability to love. I love Caleb. I would lay down my life for him. Those aren't just words, they are what I know in my heart to be true. I have no doubt whatsoever that Caleb would do the same for me or my son. Until you have experienced that type of devotion, you will never truly understand what's really important in life. One day, during a weak moment, Caleb may succumb to a person such as you. I know it can happen. If it does, yes, I would be devastated. But nothing would really change. A love like ours can't be destroyed because of a stupid mistake. So, lady, you can have your fancy college degree and your jet-set lifestyle, but when it comes to Caleb, you'll have a fight on your hands because, quite frankly, you're the one that's not good enough for him. I couldn't believe the conversation I had just overheard. I knew Paula was relentless in getting what she wanted, but I never thought she would talk that way to Jenna. I was about to rip into her when Jen started to speak. I was amazed she was willing to fight for me. Jen never backed down. I hung on every word she spoke, each syllable burying itself deep within my heart. I didn't have to wonder if she was telling the truth. I was certain of it. I knew because she had just described the very same feelings I held for her. Until that moment, I wasn't sure what was holding me back from being fully intimate with Jen. Now I knew. After what happened, I was never truly convinced that Jenna had the same degree of feelings for me that I always did for her. With that issue no longer in question, I was now finally free to open my heart to the one person I knew would cherish it for as long as time would allow. Are you ready to go, Jen? I believe our room is waiting for us, I said, wrapping my arm around her waist. Yes, I do believe I am. Wait, what did you call me? She asked in wonderment. I called you what I have always called you. You're my Jen, and you always will be, I stated sincerely. But you haven't called me that for far too long, I finished. Jen and I couldn't make it to the hotel fast enough. Years of pent-up emotion were released that night in a surge of closeness that overshadowed any and all previous attempts at romance either of us had ever shared with any of our former partners. I admit I had dated more experienced women, but nothing can compare to the type of intimacy that can be achieved when a couple's souls are truly connected. Jen and I had discussed our previous partners before reaching this point in our relationship. I learned the details of what finally became of Travis soon after I was back in town. It seemed his little midnight swim in the ocean, the one which I had arranged on his behalf before I left for California, didn't deter him from continuing to seek out already attached women. Travis's demise came in the form of a jealous husband who unexpectedly returned home early one evening, only to find Travis in bed with his wife. Rumor has it that the guy snapped and beat Travis so badly that they couldn't even have an open casket funeral. I heard that the husband pleaded temporary insanity and is now serving a 5-year stint in the state mental ward. Aside from Travis, whom she swears was nothing more than a one-night lapse, she had dated one other guy by the name of Eric for about 4 months. Eric was kind to her at a time when she really needed a friend, and their relationship eventually evolved into a physical one. Eric wasn't overly thrilled with the fact that she had a son, and she thinks that may have been one of the reasons they broke it off. Jen admits to being somewhat depressed when their brief affair ended, but not overly destroyed by it, as her feelings for Eric never materialized into the type of bond we always shared. I could relate to how she felt. I had spent time with several women since breaking up with Jen. Most of those connections were casual, with neither of us looking for anything meaningful. However, There was one woman I dated for about 2 months, Gloria, who was a genuinely good person and would have likely made a great partner for someone else. We got along well, and if my heart hadn't still been tied to Jen, I might have considered a more serious relationship with her. In the end, we mutually decided it was best to remain friends. The only thing stopping me from proposing to Jen that evening was the fact that I lacked the necessary provisions to properly make the request. Not having advance warning of our special outing, I had no reason to be carrying my great-grandmother's engagement ring with me that night. After gaining a better perspective of the situation, I opted to hold off proposing until such time that I could arrange the proper setting in which to do it. I decided to move out of my parents' home and into a temporary one-bedroom apartment. I think Jen was a little put off by my choosing to rent a place that was too small for the three of us to share, but she never complained about it. Of course, unbeknownst to Jen, I already had a real estate agent working on my behalf at the time who knew the type of home I was looking for and what time frame we had in which to locate it. Jen and I continued moving forward with our relationship, growing closer with each passing day. Although we made good use of my new apartment, I hated the times we spent apart, and I almost caved in and proposed to her more than a dozen different times. What I had in mind took months to arrange and was contingent upon a number of variables over which I had little to no control. If my plan was to be a success, I had chosen the most romantic day of the year, which incidentally also happened to be Jen's birthday, to launch my initiative. This meant that I had to disappoint Jen repeatedly, as each holiday brought anticipation of receiving a ring that never came. Although I wanted my proposal to come as a total surprise, I did relent slightly by telling her that a big surprise was on its way if she could just manage to be patient a little bit longer. This perked up her mood, and we managed to get through the holidays without seeing too many sour faces. By early February, nearly everyone I knew had some clue as to what I was planning for Valentine's Day except Jen. I am still amazed I could let that many people in on my secret, and none of them managed to spill the beans. Even her son Will had some idea of what I had in mind. I told Jen that I needed some new suits to wear when I traveled to meet clients. Everyone around the office had seen me in each of the only two I owned, and some of them quietly suggested I needed to update my wardrobe. We were coming out of one of the men's clothing stores at the mall when we bumped smack dab into a Red Cross bloodmobile. I immediately suggested that we both donate a pint, and Jen, being a little squeamish, tried to beg off. I had to really lay it on thick to get her to relent, knowing that if she didn't agree to this, months of planning could all be ruined. Thankfully, she never actually read the paper she signed, nor did she notice when the doctor put our samples in a special cooler away from the other donations. When Valentine's Day finally arrived, Jen was not overly pleased to learn that I had promised to take her son, Will, to Harbor Bay Park that morning. I explained that as we already had plans set up for later that evening, I thought it would be nice to do something special with William beforehand. She knew that I loved her son like he was my own, so Jen relented after making me swear that I would get her back home in time to get properly cleaned up before we went out that evening. I never kept that promise. Knowing Jen as well as I do, I figured it wouldn't take long for her to suggest that we ride the vortex for old time's sake. Of course, I pretended to protest, but not too strenuously, as this was what I wanted to begin with. I proposed that if we really were going to recreate our first time riding the vortex, we should ride in the front row. Jen wasn't sure this was such a good idea, as the park was fairly crowded that morning, and we wanted to make sure Will had plenty of time to visit the other attractions before we had to leave. William sided with me, saying we should wait for front row seats, and it didn't take too much more convincing to get Jen to go along with our decision. I just hoped I could get her to agree to everything else I had planned that day, or I would end up looking like the biggest fool on earth. When our turn came, Jen and I took our seats in the front exactly like we did 15 years ago, only this time her son William was sitting in the car directly behind us. Once we were strapped in and the train was getting ready to leave, a voice came over the loudspeaker, halting our departure. "Attention, folks. I regret to inform you that this train will be delayed for a bit," the voice said. Jen and I looked at each other as she said, "Not again." Almost on cue, the voice continued, "Don't worry, we are not having any problems with the train. I just wanted to take this time to recognize a very special anniversary event in the park's history. My name is Walter Hale, and 15 years ago today, I was not exactly living up to my last name. You see, at that time, the Vortex was the newest and most advanced thrill ride of its time. A representative from Travel Magazine was scheduled to arrive that very afternoon to do a feature story on it for the front page cover of their magazine. I should have been thrilled. The problem was, we had to shut down the ride due to technical difficulties. Since it was Saturday, the part we needed to get it running again wouldn't be available until the following Monday. Thousands of people had come to the park that day specifically to ride the Vortex, and I was going to have to tell them that the ride was shut down. I was discussing the problem with my chief engineer when this 10-year-old boy came up to us and tapped me on the arm, trying to get my attention. At first I thought he was lost, but as it turns out, he was instead listening in on our conversation and felt he had a solution to our problem. He suggested that we switch out the defective part with the one in the Sidewinder, which at that time was a far less popular ride. He even told us approximately how long it should take to do this. I started to explain to him that our rides did not have interchangeable parts, when my chief engineer interrupted me and said, in this particular case, the boy was correct. It turns out Caleb was a genius and knew the parts were interchangeable because he had done a report on the mechanics of amusement park rides for a college class. He was at the park that morning celebrating his friend Jenna's 10th birthday. Now, 15 years later, Caleb and Jenna are here again, only this time they brought Jenna's son William with them. Caleb and Jenna, do you have anything you would like to say to these fine folks? Mr. Hale asked, handing me the microphone. Yes, I have something I'd like to add, Mr. Hale, I said. Jen, 15 years ago today, on this very ride, you leaned over and kissed me, forever capturing my heart, I told her. At that very moment, one of the large monitor screens they had installed above the ride came to life, showing that very picture that was snapped of the two of us so long ago. I think it only fitting that, on this the anniversary of that momentous occasion, I ask you a very important question, I started to say. The video screen changed from our old photograph to a pre-recorded image of me in a tuxedo, kneeling on one knee, holding an open ring box in my hand. Jenna Hart, will you marry me? The video and I asked in unison. The crowd went wild, and I nearly dropped the microphone as Jen threw her arms around me, smothering my face with kisses, continually repeating the word yes. I placed the ring I had been carrying upon her finger amid more cheers, as I took the microphone once again and said, my only stipulation is that I don't want to wait to make you my wife. I would marry you today if I could, Jen said, loud enough for the microphone to pick up her voice. Funny you should mention that. Since we fell in love on this train and became engaged on it a few minutes ago, I think it only right we should be married here as well. Reverend Morris, would you please step out here and join us? I asked, my double entendre receiving gasps from not only Jenna, but most of the other passengers on the train. Caleb, honey, we don't have the license or the blood test completed to get married today, Jenna whispered into my ear, worried that I had not considered these obstacles. What did you say, honey? I don't think this crowd heard you, I teased. Jen repeated what she had whispered to me, loud enough that the PA picked it up. Honey, do you remember when we gave blood at the mall a few weeks ago? Well, the doctor working there that day is an old friend of mine. I had him use our samples for our blood test requirement. You agreed to it when you signed the forms, didn't you read them beforehand? I asked with a smirk on my face. I'm going to get you for this, Jen warned me, smiling. You might want to watch what you say, honey. You see that guy over there with the big video camera aimed at us? He is from the television division of Travel Magazine, and he's here to do a follow-up on our story. If you agree, our wedding will be broadcast nationwide 3 weeks from today. Mr. Hale has been kind enough to let us use the palace attraction for a reception area, and with the exception of my parents, your mother, and my uncle, who are here with us now. Come on out. Guys, all of our family and friends are there as we speak, watching through a live video feed, I explained. Since this was going to take a while, all of the other passengers on the train were offered a chance to leave and return later in the day when the Vortex was operating again. Not a single one of them would go. Kara used bobby pins to attach a veil over Jen's head that her grandmother wore when she got married. Jenna and I sat there exchanging rings and repeating our vows. When the Reverend announced that it was now time to kiss the bride, our lips met at the very moment that the train took off without any previous warning. You can only imagine the deafening screams that rang out as the crowd cheered, happy to be part of this once-in-a-lifetime event. Although I wanted to be married on the Vortex, I was not about to deny Jen the fancy wedding she always dreamed of. 38 minutes after completing our ride, Everyone was gathered inside the palace attraction, which had been transformed for the day into a wedding chapel and reception hall to watch us repeat our vows in a more traditional manner. I donned the same tux I wore to film my video proposal, while Jin was dressed in a beautiful white wedding gown, which was actually of her own choosing, though she didn't realize it at the time. Jin was curious as to how I knew which dress to get her, as I was not with her when she tried it on. "Well, honey, I guess you have Tiffany to thank for me knowing which dress to buy you," I told her. "Who's Tiffany?" Jin wanted to know. "She is the sales lady at Elegant Styles who helped you find the dress you wore to our second chance prom. I asked your mother where you purchased it and went to see Tiffany myself. I was hoping they might still have your measurements on file. She did me one better by saying that you had seen this dress while shopping for the one you bought and completely fell in love with it. Since we really didn't have you to model it for alterations, Tiffany did the best she could using the measurements they still had on file from your last fitting. I think it turned out rather well, don't you?" I asked, grinning. A professional makeup artist was assigned to help her get ready, and although I may have been biased, I don't think there was ever a more radiant bride than my Jin was that afternoon. Once word leaked about what was happening, I think every guest in the park that day showed up to wish us well. Of course, before we could leave, we were interviewed by the magazine to fulfill our contractual obligations. They asked Jin if she had suspected anything, and she could honestly tell them that she had not. I was asked how I came up with the idea of getting married on a roller coaster. I responded that a few months back, Jin had gone through a lot of trouble to recreate an event in our lives that didn't turn out as we planned the first time around. I told them that I wanted to return the favor and create a wedding event that nobody would ever forget. I had taken 2 weeks off work for our honeymoon and secretly arranged for Jin to do the same. We could discuss if she wanted to keep working after we got back home. Mom and Dad had agreed to watch Will for us, as Kara had made plans to be with her beau, whom we were finally introduced to during our wedding reception. It seems that Dr. Thompson had recently lost his wife to cancer early last year and was afraid of what his children would say if they knew he was dating so soon after her passing. Before heading to the airport to catch our plane to Hawaii, I took Jin on a tour of a house that my real estate agent had found for us. I thought the place would be the perfect home for the three of us and any future additions to our family that may arrive at a later date. I had already submitted a bid on the place with the understanding that it was contingent upon my new wife's approval. The 5-bedroom ranch with oceanfront access was priced fair due to the declining real estate market and located within a few miles of either of our parents' homes. As I expected, Jin fell in love with the place but worried that we wouldn't be able to afford it. Her eyes got big as saucers when I explained to her how much cash my patents had generated for us. "You're rich," she exclaimed. "Billionaires are rich, we're simply well off," I corrected. "Having $15 million in the bank is a hell of a lot more than just simply being well off," Jin said. "All right, so we're very well off. You didn't think I would let you marry an indigent, did you?" I asked. "I would have married you even if I had to panhandle for cash on the streets," she told me, with a look in her eye that left no doubt she meant it. "That's sweet of you, dear, but I think my way is better," I replied with a grin. We had a fantastic time on our honeymoon, and although I won't go into details about our nightly closeness, I will say that, despite the enticing array of restaurants and 24-hour room service, we managed to lose about 15 pounds collectively on that trip. The following year, Jin and I attended another wedding, this time in Las Vegas. Dr. Thompson had proposed to Kara the night we were married, but they decided to wait a year before tying the knot, out of respect for his children. I was amazed how family-oriented Sin City had become. We spent the days going to water parks with William, leaving the evenings free for us to engage in more adult forms of entertainment, as they had excellent 24-hour childcare facilities. Jin and I continued to work on our marriage, and although I wouldn't always call our lives perfect, I sure wouldn't trade it for door number 2. Sorry, Money Hall. Paula and I still travel together on occasion, and she has made it quite clear that the second I get tired of being Family Guy, her legs would be wide open. The woman just doesn't get it, and no matter what type of weak moment I may face, she is never going to get me. The final adoption papers came through on William a year ago, and he now calls me Dad. One morning at the breakfast table, we were discussing his 10th birthday. I asked him how we should celebrate and wasn't too surprised when he suggested we go to Harbor Bay Park, as he'd been talking for weeks about this brand new thrill ride that had just opened up. What had come as a bit of a shock is when he asked if we could take his friend Susie along with us. I glanced over at Jen, and we shared a knowing smile before turning back to William and tentatively agreeing to his request upon the approval of the girl's parents. I don't think I've ever seen a boy his age fly to the phone so fast just to call up a dumb old girl. That's the end of today's story. If you haven't yet, please like the video, subscribe, and turn on the bell. What are your thoughts? Share them in the comments. We read them all. And thanks for watching. You're always welcome here.